as a dear friend of mine once said, it's been 63 years and I still don't know who I am. But anyway, so my name was Father Don Auther. I was happy to hear that somebody's from Oro Valley, Arizona. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And if you're in California, anywhere from Arizona sounds good, because there's a bigger distance between Arizona and California than between Arizona and almost any other place in the world. But it's good to be in California and not in Arizona, especially in these days. But it's so I am from Phoenix, and I have my Jesuit life. I entered 43 years ago. It looks 42 and a half years ago in 1977. I became a Jesuit novice down in outside Santa Barbara in Montecito, and it was a beautiful place. We don't have it anymore. And shortly after entering, about 3 or 4 months later, we began the spiritual exercises. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the spiritual exercises have so influenced my life and my spirituality and my way of looking at things that if you cut me, I bleed Jesuit. It's just, I was so young when that happened, and it's just kind of part of, how I look at life and how I look at being in the church and everything like that. I went through the normal formation, did a lot of stuff in Spanish, and therefore, when I got ordained, I worked at our high school in Phoenix for a while as campus minister and other things. We began an inner city education project, which I helped to promote in Spanish. And then I began to work in parishes, largely with the Spanish speaking folks, moving between Phoenix and San Diego. I ended up being a pastor at our parish that we have in San Diego, which was a Mexican national parish, still does all sorts of things in Spanish. And then last year came up here, and my first day of work was March 17th, which, if you remember, was the day when everything locked down in the 5 Bay Area counties. So this has been a huge learning experience for me, doing stuff online. We've kind of shifted as much as we could to online. We have to obviously cancel our retreat program here. I'm at the Jesuit Retreat Center in Los Altos, so we're just a little bit from San Jose and not too far from San Francisco. And it is a beautiful place, 28 acres in the middle of Silicon Valley. And there are beautiful places. I'm directing this young guy through a retreat now. And he was saying, oh, yeah, there are beautiful trails and stuff like that. It's a little small for me, but being 63 years old, it's plenty big for me. It's wandering around here. Yeah, it's nice. And there's an elevation grade, and yeah, it's like being in paradise. It's not, I'm not sheltering in place. No, no, no. I am sheltering in paradise. And that's been very beautiful. I'm constantly battling the deer who eat the flowers because I'm doing gardening. And I figure if that's the worst problem I have, I'm about the luckiest person in the whole world. I get to look at the evil deer who are fat beyond belief because I keep putting flowers out for them, apparently. So anyways,
can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you just for a moment to let everyone know that we are recording this session, so that if so people can hear it later if they would like to. And if you would like to, just so everyone know we are recording. If you don't want to be recorded, you can turn off your video, but you don't have to. We love having it on. All right, thanks.
Yes, so that what I say could be used against me in the future. It'll be recorded. So anyways, this place is dedicated to the spiritual exercise, to giving the spiritual exercises in a lot of different ways. It's not the only thing we do, but it's the primary thing that we do. And it's just a wonderful place to be here for that. The other day I was, I've been directing this young man, and and he goes to mass with us, and it's just us and him, the Jesuits who are here, and him. And, I started to get very nervous because, he's young and he's not married, and, who knows what his, path in life is going to be. But every mass, the homily seemed to center around different Jesuit themes, like one Jesuit said, right over in that corner of this place, I was sitting there and I felt the call to be a Jesuit, and then, others would talk about, and we look at this thing that, that we did in the 1500s or 1600s, and it was such a powerful, thing and gift that, we had and gave to the church. And then when you look at the spiritual exercises in here, you really know that this is what's, well, I became so afraid that all the other Jesuits were trying in a not so subtle way to convince this guy that he should be a Jesuit. And I thought that's the last thing, that we should be doing. But then I began to think, I reflected, wait a minute, if he weren't there, we would probably be saying the same things, very similar. Whenever, the Jesuit who said right over in that corner, that's 66 years ago, where I heard the call to be a Jesuit, he's told us that any number of times. Give you an idea how old he is, but he tells the same stories, but he uses that often, and I thought, the spiritual experience, being Jesuits, has had such an impact on us that whenever we approach the Word of God, or we approach our own lives, it's the spiritual exercises. We all kind of bleed Jesuit when you cut us. And that's because of the spiritual exercises, really. And having been formed in them, at such an early age. But the spiritual exercises, that is what I'm finding as I direct people through, and I've done that for a while, but now it's a more kind of full-time job, I guess, that the spiritual exercises do have an impact. They transform in some ways our ways of looking at life and our ways of looking about what God is calling us to do and how we should relate with that incredible God that we have discovered in our lives. Let me just stop there for 1 minute and ask Lucy, how long should I talk for? Because I have the capacity to talk for a very long time.
We normally close at noon, and at that time we say the Our Father together. So whatever portion you want to have for talking, and if you want to have a question and answer at the end.
So these people could have to listen to me for another 40 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So why don't I talk for another maybe 30 minutes, and then maybe people would like to argue with me or something,
That sounds great. I think that people really enjoy having an opportunity to ask questions. Yeah.
Is 30 minutes too long, do you think? I mean, why don't I go to 11:45, and then people would have 15 minutes and stuff before they escape with an Our Father on their lips.
That sounds great.
Okay, great. All right, good. So that's what I'll do. I'll try to do that anyway. So the spiritual exercises themselves, it's really a retreat manual that St. Ignatius came up with. His story is very interesting. He lived, kind of a life that wasn't so good. A cannonball brought that to a crashing end, and then he had this recovery period. And during that recovery period, through some books that he was given, he began to examine his life and say, where is God in all of this? And the Lord really dealt with him in a very powerful way. Would that cannonball shattered all of our legs at the appropriate moment in our lives. And I think, figurative cannonballs often do hit us at times. So anyway, in his recovery, he began to really experience remarkable graces, and they came to him through a meditation on the life of Christ, some things about the saints. He took that very seriously, and so when he began to live this completely different life, and I won't go into all the details of that. One of the things that he did curiously is he tried to put together the experiences or similar experiences that brought him to conversion. And then he would offer those experiences in a programmed way to other people, on the Myers-Briggs Okay, we're talking about a major J, major J. So he organized them all as best he could, and then he began to guide people through it. Well, he was so successful that the Inquisition put him in jail, because they were afraid that he was giving a sort of unorthodox, knowledge and and kind of practice to people. And they would always have to release him because he was just like super orthodox. And so, anyways, he kept refining this as a layman. I mean, he's not a priest at all. Eventually, he will determine that if he wants to continue to help souls, he can either do that from, by periodically being locked up by the Inquisition, or he can become a priest, and then people will give him carte blanche, hopefully, to deal with people. It didn't actually turn out that way, but it turned out much better than he thought because he was able to enlist other people. Because when he led people through the exercises, some of them said, whatever you're doing, we want to do. That's what we want to do. So the transformation and the conversion in people's lives was so profound that it really, led people to, to a new direction in their lives, and he saw that. So he gave the exercises even after you become a priest. He would give it to lay people. He would give it to his ideal person was a young man with some education and no commitments in life, because that's the sort of person he saw as able to really listen to the call of the Lord and go forward. But he did not in any way limit himself to giving the exercises to just young men or even to the clergy. The one joke we know that he laughed at actually demonstrates that this wasn't just for kind of people who might want to become Jesuits. He had an abbot came and wanted to do the exercises, an abbot in Rome. So he assigned one Jesuit to give him the exercises. And so they began the exercises, and the Pope died. So the abbot who was there in Rome had to turn the monastery over to house all the people coming for the papal conclave. And so he backed out of the exercises, postponing them till later. And then then the Pope, a new Pope got elected, and he went back to do the exercises. And that Pope died. So he had to stop doing the exercises and, coming to put up that. And Ignatius heard about this and he was peeved. So he called the guy he had assigned to direct him, and said, "What's up? What's going on here?" And the guy responded, "Two popes are always going to trump a bishop or an abbot." And Ignatius thought that was very funny. So he saw the exercises being given to other people, and remarkably, if someone had made the exercises and had been profoundly, affected by them, he thought that person would be capable of giving the exercises to somebody else, because the fruit of it was that it somehow touched you and changed you, and it was really kind of a remarkable thing. So this is kind of, the exercises are a trajectory of conversion, but for most of us, it has two purposes. And for most people nowadays, it can be about making a decision, a serious decision, not the ones that kind of take life in a different direction. But for a lot of people, it can be about deepening the relationship with God and coming to live a life that's really much more focused on the Lord. And so people do it for different reasons. The format of the exercises, somebody mentioned that about 20 years ago or a while ago, he had done the exercises in that 6-month program. So the two major ways of doing the spiritual exercises in a more or less complete form are the 19th annotation and the 20th annotation. Those annotations are notes at the beginning of the spiritual exercises. The 19th annotation, Ignatius says, for a person who can't go away for 30 days in a place like here, where we are here, because of commitments and everything the person has, that person can do the exercises by praying, each day for about an hour over the material. And so if the 30-day retreat is 30 days and you pray 4 or 5 times a day, each week of doing the prayer once a day for an hour, kind of makes up for one day. So it's about 30 days or 30 weeks, 36 weeks, depending on if there's some kind of introductory material to kind of get you used to praying that way. So that's a way that many, many places do that. And I know there at St. Ignatius and at St. Agnes, they offer that way of doing the retreat. We do here, and it's, many different places they do that. The 20th annotation is the 30 days kind of removed from your normal activity, living in a place where you can go to mass and where you can pray quietly every day, for 4 or 5 hours meditation, where they fix your meals and you don't have to worry about cooking and things like that. So that is, one of the ways. But it's kind of curious that Ignatius was so flexible in knowing that the exercises could be done, and maybe needed to be done in different ways. There have been a lot of other ways that have developed kind of along the line of that 19th annotation, so that people can do the exercises in that way. I began doing in 19th annotation, retreats, maybe 30 some years ago, directing people through them. And it is amazing, what happens to people during that time. I think I began doing 19th annotation retreats with the bias that it really wouldn't have the impact of a 30-day retreat, off, in a place, in a retreat center. But I came to realize quickly that it did have a real impact on people's lives, and that many people made really remarkable decisions from it and continued to use the discernment that they picked up during the retreat in other aspects of their lives. People that I know, this happened. One person sold her house and began to work, with a Catholic worker. It just had that impact. Another person I know, towards the end of kind of a 19th annotation style retreat, went out and bought a piece of property, put a double wide there, and became a house of prayer for people that now, about 10 or 11 years later, I don't know how many, maybe 2,000 people have gone there to make retreats. All of it, free will offering, so that people with lower income could do it. Other people I know, are just really dedicating their lives to serving God in whatever way they could. Life didn't make much sense without this dedication to God. That was such a powerful experience during the retreat. And that's, during that 19th annotation retreat, really wonderful and powerful, kind of transformation for people in their lives. To the point now that I'm really aware that maybe as people are going to retire, or people who are retired, it can be a wonderful way to help orient them to this new time of life when maybe they do have more time, providing the, that their commitments are really, not as much as they were before. What does make up the retreat? And let me go over that a little bit. One of the difficulties is at times we can talk about Ignatian spirituality as something that, we can explain to people. But in a real sense, Ignatian spirituality, as so many things, is caught. It's not taught. You go through the exercises and you come to see kind of this vision that Ignatius has. And the vision focuses on Jesus, on Christ, on wanting to know him and wanting to, by knowing him more, love him more, and wanting to follow him more. It's a very Christocentric, Jesus-centric spirituality. So the spiritual exercises begin with what we call the first week. We divide it into 4 weeks, but it probably would be better to talk about 4 sections, because a week inadvertently brings 7 days into our mind for a 30-day retreat that fits really nicely and neatly, 7 days for each week, and that's wrong. It's not 7 days for each of the weeks. So it's better to talk about, 4 sections. The first week or the first section, probably isn't going to last 7 days. With this kid that I've been directing, we spent maybe 4 or 5 days in it, is all. But it focuses on getting stock of yourself as a sinner, coming to Christ and sensing the mercy and the, of God, and somehow reaching this point where you say, yeah, I'm a sinner, but, like St. Peter, I can't use my sinfulness as a shield saying, go away from me, Lord, I'm a sinner. No, we're still called into to somehow, serve the Lord. It's in spite of our sinfulness, because of our sinfulness, whatever it is, so that can be a very difficult week, very dark, but generally fairly dramatic because, just as the paper is filled with bad news, bad news sells, and it's interesting. And then when we look at our sinfulness, it might be hard, but it's kind of dramatic. Then it shifts, and the exercise is now focused on kind of a slow reading of the life of Jesus through the Gospels. And one of the things that I've always found so fascinating, because we can talk about the spiritual exercises, and it seems so esoteric. There must be secret things in it, or there must be a new way of, doing and, looking and whatever. Most of the time in the spiritual exercises is spent praying over gospel passages. Ignatius has a few meditations in there, and they're powerful ones that help to orient that reading. But it's really the reading of this gospel. And so I feel so comfortable directing people through the exercises because really what I'm doing is say, read this gospel passage. The most beautiful thing is that the gospel transforms lives. And I know that people can read the gospel, and many people have read the gospel. Somehow or another, praying through the gospel in this particular way, on this sort of retreat, maybe meeting with a person once a week or once a day, it drives home this life of Christ and this kind of relationship with Christ in a way that I haven't seen happen in too many other venues. So if you want to know what the spiritual exercises mostly are, it's a close, prayerful, powerful reading of the gospel, and that really gives me greater confidence in it because it's not something that is not available to most everybody. Because I get suspicious of things that are like conspiracies or that are secret, that you have to have a certain key or clue in order to get. Spiritual exercises aren't that way. As I say, there are some passages that Ignatius, puts in there that help to orient our reading of the gospel. But by and large, it's the person with their New Testament, wrestling with God, if you will. And that's the second week. So it's life of Jesus. And then the third week, or the third section, focuses on Jesus's death, his passion and his death. And it's a slower, more intense reading of those last 24 hours or less than that, maybe 12 hours of Jesus's life. And it's powerful in its own impact, and one enters into that. And since one has spent, the better part of 2 weeks, or the better part of probably 3 or 4 months, if you're doing it, the 19th annotation, praying to know Christ more and to love him more and to follow him better. When you move into the passion, it's someone that this is happening to. I don't know if you've seen The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson, but my problem with that movie was that we never really know the Jesus. We begin with him in the garden, going through all of this stuff, but we don't have a history of him in our minds. And so for me, the movie became watching something terrible happen to somebody I really didn't know, but I felt sorry for, because how could you not feel sorry for something horrible happening to anybody? But in the spiritual exercises, this is somebody now. The Lord has spent, this time revealing himself to you. And as you go into the passion in the death, there's a closer connection to Christ that really comes out of there. And it's, it reaches through the pages of scripture, and in the Holy Spirit, you feel it much more deeply. And then the last part of the spiritual exercises, the last section, is on the resurrection of Jesus and the impact that has on one. And again, because one is getting to know Christ, there are different little revelation bombs that are waiting to explode as you pray with this Christ that you've gotten to know, and who now, even more focused through the resurrection, is a part of your life and is speaking to you now and will be a part of your life, until you die, and then even more a part of your life after you die. And that has the potential to not only be mind-blowing, but also world transforming, because you now live in God's world where the resurrected Christ embraces just about everything that's not really sinful and horrible. And that's really a powerful experience. As part of that is one of the things that is what I call the secret of the Jesuits, and that's the contemplation to attain the love of God. So if the Jesuits have a secret, it's that thing. It's not the gold, although in my gardening, I'm always digging holes, hoping I find the Jesuit gold, but so far, no luck finding the Jesuit gold. But the Jesuit gold is the contemplation to attain love, because it so focuses on how we have been blessed super abundantly by God. And now what are you going to do with it? I mean, just like every time that we receive a gift from somebody, we kind of think we ought to reciprocate, whether we can or not. So this super abundant God has blessed us so much, we want to reciprocate. Instead of going through life as sometimes, in bad moments, I think, Lord, how can you be asking this of me? I can't, I don't have the resources to do this. Instead, after that, you go, not only is the glass half full, the glass is over brimming. And so let's get to work, do what God wants us to do. We have been blessed beyond all imagination. And that sort of prayer repeated frequently in our lives, or certainly once a year through our annual retreats, focuses you on what God has done and God's willing to do, and how you really, joyfully want to respond to God, with the wonderful graces that God has given to you to turn, that back to the Lord. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the spiritual exercises are about. As I say, that there are a lot of adaptations of that 19th annotation retreat, some of them done in group, some of them done online, some of them done, through parish groups. We all, often too, weekend retreats are offered where themes from the exercises, different exercises that come from there, might be offered too. It wouldn't be fair really to call those the spiritual exercises, but for a century, or here in this place, or before we got this place, those weekend retreats have been immensely helpful for people, to kind of stay focused on what's really important in their lives. Because if it doesn't do anything else, generally the weekend retreat, along with the 19th annotation, along with the 20th, is going to have people focus on one thing, for at least part of the time, and that's the principle and foundation. It comes at the beginning of the exercises. It's really not part of the prayer, but it's really forceful, and it just basically says, hey, we're created for God, and everything around us is meant to help us get to God, but we can use those things in ways that, aren't helpful to getting to God. As we all know, the beautiful things of life can become ends in their own, to their own, to our disadvantage. And so therefore we need an attitude, say, whatever I run into every day or during my life, I want to look at it and say, can you help me to get closer to God? And if it can, embrace it, go with it. If it's not going to help me to get closer to God, to say, wait a minute, this is not going to be that, I want to stay aloof from this thing. And then to have that attitude, whatever God wants, the attitude of St. Paul, who says, I consider all things rubbish if I can just attain to Christ, the glory of his resurrection through his passion. And to look at things and say, hey, you're rubbish unless you can help me to attain my end, which is to be united with Christ for all eternity. If you can, I love you. I want you. I want to, kind of be with you. But if you're not going to help me with that, that's probably not good for me to value you in any way. And then he says this remarkable thing. We shouldn't value a long life over a short life. You can say, well, I can serve God really well with a long life. So I'm halfway towards a long life. But then we know St. Therese, the little flower, lasted 24 years. She might have become a bitter old nun if she hadn't died so young. And she was the most popular saint of the 20th century, with hands down, after the Virgin Mary and maybe St. Francis of Assisi, maybe. But 24 years. So don't value health over sickness. Go, well, if I'm healthy, I can serve God. And then we look at the saints that enjoyed or didn't enjoy, but they had very serious health problems. Poor Francis of Assisi, by the time he died at the age of 44, could hardly walk. He had the stigmata. Could hardly eat. He had the stigmata. He couldn't see, and yet he is the most popular saint in history after the Blessed Mother. So health over sickness, yeah, try to tell God that I need to be healthy to serve you. I said, well, let's figure this one out. Wealth over poverty. We say, well, if I have more money, I can serve God better. I say, well, if God wants you to, but most, it's not that easy to find a rich saint out there. There are some, there's no question about that, but not too many. Or having a good name, good reputation versus, infamy. And how many saints went through, great, moments of being considered, all sorts of bad things. And the Lord raised them up, So it doesn't mean that we should prefer sickness, prefer poverty, prefer illness, or prefer, what else have I said? A short life, infamy. We shouldn't prefer those things either. But whatever God wants, whatever's going to get us to God. And so on our weekend retreats, on the retreats for 30 days, on the 19th annotation, we confront that reality that's really bracing, perhaps difficult, but I think we all know it's true. We may not want to face it, but we all know it's true. And so those are the sorts of things that come up in the spiritual exercises and are wonderful. I was asked, which I'm very happy to do, to put a plug in for our center. So we have a lot of retreats going on virtually and everything. And eventually we'll have people come here, we're hoping. But, we don't know. Every day brings new and almost seems more threatening news on the pandemic front. So whenever we can, we will. But in the meantime, we've got all sorts of retreats going on virtually. And you would be welcome to sign up for anything that we're doing. So you can find that on our Jesuit Retreat Center of Los Altos website. We're Jesuit Retreat Center, and we're in Los Altos. We also have another name which is more loved by us, which is El Retiro de San Inigo. But El Retiro is what we were known for many years. And then they thought it would be good to make sure that people kind of could recognize this was a Jesuit Retreat Center for those that knew there was a Jesuit Retreat Center in the Silicon Valley, but didn't know the name, so they changed it. But we go by both kind of Jesuit Retreat Center of Los Altos and El Retiro here in Los Altos. You can check our website. We've got programs that go from a weekend Zoom retreat to a program once a month, to a program, just at one time, to a program every other week for 4 weeks or for 8 weeks, different things like that. We try to make sure that our programs can maybe help people at different and with different interests in the spiritual life, but all of them kind of focused on taking some of the wisdom of St. Ignatius and making that available to people, wherever they are and however they, they can desire that. We do offer, like a 4 or 5 day silent retreat by virtually. One would, of course, have to have a place where one could do that, but if your particular living situation allows you to do that, you might consider, doing a 4 or 5 day silent retreat, or and here, hopefully in the summer, we offer those for 8 days or for 5 days, or the 30-day retreat we offer during the summer. And we're hoping that we will be able to, to offer that to you, this summer. But if you want to do a 4 or 5 day, guided retreat or directed retreat, we individually will meet with one of us. Just let us know. And the other thing that we also are pretty good at is if people don't fit within the schedule of retreats that we offer, for 4 or 5 days, they're free to get in touch with us, and we'll try. We can have people come here, once we are able to open up, and they get their room and they meet with one of the retreat staff, once a day, and do their retreat that way. Obviously, it's a little more helpful for us if people come at a certain time, group of people, but we do a lot of individually directed retreats outside of our own schedule, because people's lives don't fall into schedules that we predetermine a lot of times. So that's kind of an explanation. I guess I've talked for a while. Do you have any questions or comments or arguments with me? Lucy, could you kind of run this part of it? Because I don't know.
Yes, I can. And people are welcome to write it into the chat box if they have a question, or if they would like to ask it themselves. You could raise your hand physically or using the reactions on the Zoom at the bottom. And I'll start with some. Victor Ibailo has actually already loaded us with a question. And his question is, what part of the Ignatian consciousness examine play in the 20th or 19th annotation of the spiritual exercises?
The spiritual exercises can become a training ground for the examen. In other words, that while you do the exercises, then once a day or twice a day, you should kind of sit down and examine, how the Lord has been, kind of working in your day through your prayer and through your kind of, just wandering through your day. So Ignatius introduces us to the examen during the spiritual exercises as a way to help a person begin to use that in discernment. What things have come to me from God, what things, may not be coming to me, may be coming from the evil spirit, different things like that. And so by the end of the retreat, either the 19th annotation in 6, 7, 8 months, or the 30-day, you've got a pretty solid habit of doing the examen, and that can be a really good thing. If I could say one other thing too, we're starting to do things in Spanish too. So if you know people who are much more comfortable in Spanish, we're moving in that direction. So anyway, so
Jennifer McNeil, will you unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thank you for this. This is fantastic. My question is, do you have something we can sign up for through your retreat center during Lent to kind of keep us going in a dedicated way every day through Lent?
Sure. We don't necessarily have something every day. Every day we do the Wisdom of St. Ignatius for about 3 or 4 minutes, a video, and we send that out to people. But we are going to do a conversion series. So each day, each week during Lent, we'll talk about the conversion of somebody or other. Father Kevin Leideck, who's here, gave me Herod the Great's conversion because I didn't suggest anyone do it. So we will not have Herod the Great's conversion. Never happened, whatever. So, but we like the conversion of Ignatius, St. Paul. We have we'll be doing David in his conversion. So that, but an actual Lenten program for every day, we don't have that. We've got a couple of retreats in Lent to do that. And I'm doing spiritual disciplines. That'll be every other week. Yeah, so we have some things that will be a day of recollection, things like that we'll be doing.
Thank you.
Adele Dunningham, will you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Thank you so much, Father, for your for this talk. It's been wonderful. I did the spiritual exercises many years ago, and then went into spiritual direction on a regular basis for many years. My question is, does anyone, do you have anything for people who are really looking for ongoing spiritual direction?
They can always ask us, and then we try to match them with one of us here if we have the time, or with somebody else if we don't. Sure. We do a lot of spiritual direction. And what's so funny, for us is none of us would have considered directing somebody by Zoom or by the phone before the pandemic. We just, it's like, no, you got to have the person right in front of you because of all the cues that you pick up from the person sitting there. But we were forced to do it by Zoom and by phone. And we found that we're directing people all over the place. And it actually seems to work pretty well. Yeah. So we are doing a lot of spiritual direction, by the internet, which is a powerful experience.
I started out early with the Jesuits in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and from birth, that's where I was baptized.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay,
I
thank you for your question. Yeah.
Michael Neary has submitted a question, which is, the Spiritual Life Center at St. Agnes offers the 18th annotation. Any thoughts on that format?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't mention that, and I probably should have, because I should know what the other desert places are doing, and I don't. But the 18th annotation is, how do I put it? They're different spiritual exercises without going through the 19th annotation 36 weeks, or without going through 30 days away. And so they try to recapitulate a little bit some of the things that Ignatius thought were most important. Some of the things he thought were most important. And so there may be a little bit the focus of, how to live your life more closely to the Lord, and to draw kind of exercises and passages of scripture, sharing with a spiritual director or with a group about that. And it's a lot more flexible, a way of, approaching, kind of the spiritual life. Yeah, so it is a good thing. And to some degree, most of the time that we direct people through the spiritual exercises, we actually do kind of a form of the 18th annotation retreat to start. So it might be, 4 to 6 weeks of praying with different scripture passages, that can really help the person to gradually move into the spiritual exercises. Or it might be a couple of days, if it's the 30-day retreat, to kind of enter into the whole atmosphere of prayer. So that 18th annotation retreat can stand alone, but it can also be paired with a 19th annotation or a 20th annotation retreat.
And Anthony Martinez has asked you to comment on how the spiritual exercises experience can help understand and integrate the challenges we face today in light of the pandemic and the political environment in the United States.
Sure. I think all of us Jesuits, when we try to figure out what's going on and what we should do, we rely on the discernment. And I probably should have said more about this, but during the spiritual exercise, in this book of the spiritual exercises, there are these rules for the discernment of spirits that kind of help us to determine when we're kind of moved to do one thing or another, or when we see movements, not so much like political movements, but when we see in our society different trends going on, to kind of bring that to God and say, does this feel like something that's from God, or does it feel like it's something, from the evil one? And so the discernment of spirits that Ignatius puts in the exercises are really very helpful, because ultimately one has to determine in these sorts of situations, what is God calling oneself to do? What am I supposed to do? And by discerning the different things and trends that are going on around us, and then what response the Lord might be calling me to, the spiritual exercises can be really helpful, especially in those in the discernment of spirits. It's helpful if one is going through the exercises to see the discernment of spirits happening in one's own retreat experience, and therefore a little easier to apply that outside the exercises. But that doesn't mean by any means that somebody who doesn't do the exercises, in either of its form, can't use those rules. Help them. Many people found them really very.
There's another question from Maria Bowden. Not everybody can afford the retreats at Los Altos House. Do you have a way to accommodate that?
Do we have scholarships for people? Yeah, we do. And people have to let us know, and we'll see what we can do. It's not bad for us to, kind of stretch ourselves a little bit. But it's also, I think, something that we find people really do want to help other people to do this retreat. That's one of the things, because I've mostly been in Southern California or over in Arizona. And one of the things that I found is that people are really supportive of this retreat place. They love this place, because they, really encountered God here. And I love the place for that same reason, so people often will be helpful and generous in allowing other people to experience what they experienced here. But if you let us know, we'll try to work with you. Definitely.
Mary Clip has a beautiful question. What can one do if they fear conversion?
Yeah. Pray to God to not be afraid. Often you kind of have to use your brain when your heart goes astray in fear and stuff, and say, is God good? Yes. Would God want something bad for me? No. And so is this fear from God? No. Then God help me to overcome this fear so that I can, be, so I can be 100% for you. The second thing we could do to, is just, pray quietly about how we really long for God. That's our basic longing. We were created for God. Or as other people say, we have a God-sized hunger inside of us. And if we tap into that God-sized hunger, we're in that hunger for God, we're going to want it satisfied. And the only way to do that is to be converted, to be transformed in one way or another. But those two things, I think, can help, pray, Lord, please take this fear from me. I recognize that it can't be from you. And then also to realize how much you really do long for God, above whatever might scare you that you might hold on to or whatever. You long for God more than you can imagine. And to tap into that hunger, wow, there's a lot that you go searching for God.
Wow, that's beautiful. I see that we're almost at noon, and want to be respectful of people's time. So we will do our traditional closing by asking people to unmute themselves, and we reach out our hands to each other. It's kind of fun if you're on the gallery view. You can touch hands with the person next to you, and we say the Our Father together, and we allow the cacophony of it. And I also really want to thank you, Father Auther, for joining us this morning, and just such a wonderful presentation of overview of the spiritual exercises. It's really a gift to hear about it from you, and we will be continuing this through the spring and Lent, talking about the spiritual exercises at St. Ignatius and how we can involve them in our own lives. And I hope that people will continue to join us at Zoom Hospitality. The schedule's on the website. So Thank you, Father Author. And let's start with the Our Father.
Our
Our
Father,
Father, who
who
art
art
in
in
heaven,
heaven,
hallowed be thy
hallowed be
name.
thy name.
Thy
Thy
kingdom come,
thy
thy will be done
done
on earth as it is in
in
heaven.
heaven.
And give us this day our
Our
daily
daily
bread,
bread,
and forgive us our
forgive us our
trespasses
trespasses,
as we
as we
forgive
forgive those who
those
trespass against us.